Week 2 is in the books. Today, Evan and I will be giving you our biggest risers and fallers right here on Player Profiler. All right, welcome to Risers and Fallers. We're recapping a pretty damn wild Week 2 NFL in the books. I am Chuck Bass. As always, with me is Evan Ringler. Evan, how we doing today?
I'm doing great, except for the fact that I have Jaden Reed on 50% of my fantasy teams. But we're going to do some coping today, and hopefully find some other players to replace that.
Did Jordan Reed's Instagram live recording, fresh off of surgery underneath all of the meds, give you any hope that he might just be the kind of guy that can get back to the field sooner rather than later?
Absolutely. I mean, he's just a pure dog, and he'll probably be back next week.
That would be the kind of thing I'd be into. It's really hard to stomach. It's the rare occasion where the guy gets hurt on what would have been a 14-point fantasy play, and you get neither. You get neither the player nor the points. Brutal faller, but like you said, the kind of guy that'll be back and look pretty damn good, if you ask me.
Yeah, we know he's a great receiver. It's just the route share, the nerdy stuff,
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get into some nerdy stuff today. We've got 2 risers and a little sneaky 3 fallers for you guys. Got a little combo coming up. So we'll kick it off with the first one here, and that's going to be Bhayshul Tuten, up to RB38 on the Player Profiler seasonal rankings. Our top takeaway stat, which you guys can see down there in the corner, he is second in the NFL right now amongst all running backs in yards created per touch. And Evan, as you know, that's yards above and beyond what the offensive line blocks for him. So this guy is making the most of his opportunities. And let's frame this correctly, right? He's a clear number 2 to Travis Etienne. This is Travis Etienne's backfield for the moment. But what you wanted to see from him was giving a chance early and doing something with that opportunity. And with Tanks Bigsby gone, he has hit the ground running. His touchdown, I thought, really encapsulated what this offense will need, which is a running back with vision that can create in space and get up the field quickly. We've seen a lot of Travis Etienne so far in his career be a little bit more of an east-west runner. He's still looking good, don't get me wrong, but they just need a little bit different elements. So I'll ask you, Evan, what are your Tuten vibes right now?
Very high, I would say. He's a great bet, especially for the last couple months of the season, I think. We've seen Travis Etienne get off to some hot starts before, and that hasn't necessarily continued throughout those seasons. Tuten also ranks 6th in juke rate, so he's avoiding tackles at a very high rate. I think that he's clearly more explosive than Travis Etienne, and over the second half of the year, he will take over, and it'll be more of a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to note, and that's where I was going with it next. We've seen stretches out of Etienne, but we haven't really seen consistency out of him, and that's over the course of multiple coaching staffs. I do want to shout out their offensive line, specifically the interior, which has been top 10 in run block win rate. What does have me worried is that the Jaguars are having this rushing success against the Panthers and the Bengals, who are both bottom 5 against that position last year and don't look to be much better this year. They have matchups coming up against the Texans, 49ers, Chiefs, Seahawks, and Rams. That's a gauntlet leading into the bye. But the thing is, that could be more of a car wash for Travis Etienne than it is Tuten. If we're still seeing Tuten get, just a handful of opportunities per game and looking good, and we see Travis Etienne maybe get diminishing returns with his workload, we might see a little post-buy bump for Tuten. Sorry, I always keep saying Tuten. And really just what you want to see out of him is that he was able to do this in college, and the guys who get playtime early are the ones that can immediately do it in the pros. And so far, he looks to be that guy.
Yeah, I think you are definitely correct to be worried about those matchups. We shouldn't expect huge production from this backfield for the next month or so. But again, this is a late season bet.
Yeah, that's a big one, and that's what we're playing for. And that seems to be, unfortunately, the case with a lot of these rookie running backs. But so far, Tuten, when you compare expectation and opportunity to a lot of the other guys, that's why he's our riser today. So let's take a guy who is a potential stash to a guy who has been a potential smash. Rome Odunze. Evan, you drew this one up, and man, he is the talk of the town right now. What do you got for Rome?
Rome Odunze is clearly the alpha in Chicago already. You see that takeaway stat on the bottom of the screen? 23.8 expected points per game this year, the wide receiver 2, while DJ Moore is at 9.9, the wide receiver 46. just absolutely dominating him in terms of usage. And that continues when you look at other stats like target share, air yard share, and first read target share, where Odunze is essentially doubling DJ Moore's usage and more than doubling his production as well.
It's one of the most fascinating early season plot lines. I know it's early, but they've legitimately checked every single box up to wide receiver 13 in the player profiler seasonal rankings, basically a wide receiver one. And I mean, you want to talk about ROI for a wide receiver who was going as around wide receiver 35 off of the board. That is one of the best picks so far. Ben Johnson and Caleb have a lot to figure out with this offense, but they have a foundation with the connection with Rome. He's on pace for 1,400 yards. You're basically getting Amon-Ra, Lamb, Jefferson production out of him, despite what has been, a pretty, I'm not going to say disappointing because we knew it was going to be a work in progress, but there's a lot of holes in this offense, and this is not one of them.
Yeah, I expect this offense to be more pass heavy as the season goes along because the running game is just a travesty. DeAndre Swift just can't do anything back there.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to throw the ball more, even if Caleb doesn't look that great. So I'm expecting, even if these metrics like target share, air yard share regress a little bit, the expected fantasy points will still stay around the same because they're going to throw the ball more.
Definitely. That's been, the defense is going to do nothing but allow them to throw the ball more, which is going to be great. I mean, they're getting torn apart. We saw how bad the Vikings looked against the Falcons, and the Vikings put the clamps down, or the Vikings dominated in the second half of that game. And the funny thing is the Bears, they're 22nd in EPA per pass play. I feel like they'd be 32nd if Rome Odunze was not on this team. He is doing the heavy lifting in there. I mean, top 10 in air yards, deep targets, red zone looks, all these things that you absolutely want to see early and often. And they've got matchups against the Cowboys and the Raiders in the next 2 weeks. We could be talking about him as the wide receiver one going into the bye week.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And after Cowboys Raiders, it's Commanders Saints. So it doesn't stop there. Yeah, I'm all aboard the Rome train. He's kind of the only real receiver in Chicago, too. You kind of got this gadget burden stuff, and DJ Moore is kind of gadgety as well at this point. And we know they're not using Colston Loveland at all. So Rome Odunze is their only real receiver, and he's seeing all the production as a result.
And we'll leave the people with this, which I think is the best encapsulation of everything we just said. I'm going to show you Rome Odunze's 2024 route chart from week 2. This is not pretty for anybody. Nobody ever wants to see that. Why don't we take a look at what it might be for this last week? Oh my gosh. That is take the best Madden player in the world, and those are the plays that he's drawing up, and he's achieving success. And that's what Ben Johnson is doing right now. He's got a quarterback that can make magic with Rome Odunze, and I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah, there's nothing more erotic than one of these beautiful route charts.
That's what we need. We need a little Thursday eroticism for the people out there who want to see the good stuff going forward. All right. Speaking of good stuff going forward here, let's talk a little game Blazers, and who better to do it than the man himself, Matt Kelly. Take it away, Matt.
Hey, I love fantasy football. I love card collecting. And there is a new innovator in the fantasy space, which I also love, called Game Blazers, that is combining the joy of ripping packs with the joy of fantasy sports. And it's a free-to-play game. We're talking about $35,000 every week in guaranteed prizes, $750 grand total this year. They're going to be giving out in guaranteed prizes in a free-to-play game. Go to GameBlazers.com. The code is PLAYER100. PLAYER100 gets you a $100 deposit match at Game Blazers. You go there, you sign up for free, you start ripping packs, and then jump into their mini games. You get some experience points, you upgrade your cards, and then boom, 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 you're set up to exploit a new fantasy game with lots of guaranteed money. Go to GameBlazers.com. The code is PLAYER100 for that $100 deposit match, and you can thank me later.
I'll thank Matt right now. When you first load up the Player Profiler YouTube channel, the first thing Matt says when he welcomes you is, "You've reached the final level of fantasy football." And boy, is he right. He's rolling out fantasy card games. I mean, this is talking about, like, for the diehards out there, we're giving you guys everything you want. All right, let's get to our next one here. And I'm going to tee you up again here because I think your guy is a little bit more fascinating to talk about. And then we can end with some duds on my end here. And that's going to be Chargers rookie running back, Omarion Hampton. So you can see that takeaway stat in the corner. Evan, what made you, on top of the obvious data, he's down to RB20 in the player profiler seasonal rankings. What made you want to talk about Hampton today?
Yeah, so I noticed that the Chargers have the worst offense in the league in EPA per rush and the best EPA per dropback in the NFL. And this kind of makes sense when you look at their pass rate, which is first, or a dropback rate over expected, which is by far first in the NFL. I think they're noticing that, and they're just going to keep throwing the ball even more. And then the bigger worry, maybe not bigger, but another big worry is that Hampton saw significantly less playing time in week 2. His running back rush share dropped from 94% in week 1 to 50% in week 2. And his route participation dropped from 61% to 53%. So I think we do need to be worried about what this running game looks like. And he also hasn't been featured in the passing game yet. Just a 10% target rate and 7% target share are not the numbers you want to see there. This has all led to just 5.8 points per game this season. I am expecting it to be better than that down the stretch for sure. But I just see a hard ceiling on Hampton right now with the way this run game looks. They're also 29th in run blocking rating, so it's not all on him. It's more so on the offensive line.
Yeah, this is a really tough one when you consider just how explosive the passing game has been and how little they're getting out of their first round pick. I mean, they have three wide receivers that you can start any given week and probably feel pretty confident about it now. They're passing at a rate that I saw today that hasn't been seen since I think like 1984 Dan Marino, and which is the funniest thing in the world. You think about when Greg Roman taking control of this offense. He did last year. We saw them do that with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. This was about as copy and paste as I thought we were going to get from a rushing attack when you bring in Hampton and you bring in Harris and you just try to run it back, but with more successful results. And instead, we're seeing that once Justin Herbert was healed from his injury last year, they became a pretty dominant passing attack, not top 5, not top 8, but top half of the league. And Herbert and Ladd McConkey were playing very well, and they've just rode that into what I think has been a pretty damn successful start. They've played some good defenses. KC is they have a good front 7, so maybe that helps Hampton a little bit. Las Vegas, I think, is turning out to have a little bit better of a front than maybe expected. They did a really good job against the Patriots, who's, we just saw Ramondre Stevenson tear up the Dolphins, but is that a Dolphins thing? That's why week 2 is tough, right? Week 1 feels like the 4th week of the preseason, but week 2 feels like, okay, let's see what we've got in our other guys. We're seeing that with a lot of these rookie running backs. You're seeing that with J.K. Dobbins. You're seeing that with Ramondre Stevenson. And the list kind of goes on. And we saw it with Najee Harris this week as well. So not a terrible amount of panic, but it does feel like it's going to be difficult to see that ROI of people who took Hampton in the 3rd round, maybe 2nd round even, pay off relatively soon with a matchup with Denver coming up, a matchup against the Giants, matchup against the Commanders. It's not until week 6 that they get the Dolphins that maybe some noise could be made, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I'm not expecting him to be a stone cold bust. I just see him with a cap ceiling. He's a back end running back too. Even if he has a dominant backfield share here, it's still, I just don't know if we can get to RB1 production with the way that they're running this offense and with the way that this offensive line has looked in the running game.
Definitely. And they're and they also had some, this stat line might have looked a little differently if some of those goal line opportunities, some of those red zone sequences had played out a little better. They just kind of did some goofy things in the second half of that game that I thought, when you're already in a precarious situation like Hampton is, you just kind of wonder, if Hampton had 9 points versus 3 and he had a 7-point game and then a 9-point game, how much differently would we feel about him? Probably not terribly much because Najee is still making himself known, but that's just, our sample size, it's still pretty limited. And that's something we have to remember when we're talking about a lot of these guys, and especially these next 2. God.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about those.
Let's talk about these 2. We've got a combo for you all here. We squeezed Evan Engram and Mark Andrews into the same frame here. These are our stepbrothers. And as you can see from the takeaway stat, Mark Andrews, he just had his 2 lowest, for any game that Mark Andrews has had a reception, he just had his 2 lowest receiving yard totals of his career in back-to-back games. And as you can see for Evan Engram, he was 39th in yard per route run, which is a 35% drop off from his 2023 season, which was when he was really his most effective last. And I guess the problem, I'll start with Engram there. This offense is short balls or long balls. That's what it was last year, and that's what it's going to be this year. And with Sutton, Franklin, and Marvin Mims dominating the long ball, that leaves Engram kind of in no man's land because he's not catching these screens. And if he is, he's getting a very short yardage total. There was a sequence against this game against the Colts that I thought was very telling, to where there was a bootleg rollout at the goal line to the right that Engram had feasted on in his time in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. And Adam Troutman was the running that route, catching it for a touchdown in the corner. If Engram isn't even getting those, then I'm trying to figure out where he fits into this offense altogether.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's really no place for him, I guess. He does not have the Joker role. I think we can say that for sure. Tight end 39 in expected fantasy points per game right now. Just never trust Sean Payton. That's one of my biggest lessons over the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, he in any position really, right? Whether it's
Right.
the wide receiver 2, the tight end 1, the running back 2. Drafters came into this season expecting Engram to walk into that secondary pass catcher role, and he's 5th right now with 5th and falling. And if you're an Engram skeptic, you had 2 reasons to be so. 1, injuries, which he's still definitely dealing with. And 2, a lot of that productivity came in Jacksonville when Calvin Ridley was their other primary target. And he had just come off a 2-year riverboat gambling cruise. So not exactly, Calvin Ridley working at the peak of his powers. All the statistics for him are pretty bad. And this is not a run heavy team. They're 18th in pass rate right now. And you could go glass half full a little bit on him, right? Like they're adjusting to a lot of new pieces. There were a couple routes on Sunday that Nix missed, whether he was pressured or he just made the wrong read. So if Engram has, let's use a similar example that we just did for Hampton. If Engram finishes this game 4 receptions for 40 yards, do you feel any better about him considering the state of the tight end position?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd feel a little bit better just knowing that he's not a stone cold bust. That's still very much in play right now. He might just be a zero that you can never put in your lineup again.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of emphasis to do that when you're getting a lot of late round production from guys like Kraft, Johnson, Zach Ertz, Ferguson, Fannin, Kincaid, and Pitts. These are all top 10 or top 12 guys right now. McBride, Warren, and Bowers are really the only top guys that are holding down the lineup. So hopefully we can get something out of them. And let's transition that again to our other one here, Mark Andrews. Last year, the saving grace for the diabetic dynamo was touchdowns and touchdowns alone. He does have 2 red zone targets in 2 games, but he didn't have a single game last year where he had more than 6 catches or more than 68 yards. And that was despite playing in all 17 games. What's the outlook for Mark here?
Yeah, like you mentioned, even last year he was clearly a worse version of his former self. He was just only getting there via the touchdowns, and this year we've just seen nothing. He's at 4.8 expected points per game, which is the tight end 33. He doesn't even qualify for a lot of other stats because he only has 4 targets, 2% air yard share, 8% target share. I can't find a single redeeming quality here. And this is all with Isaiah Likely out of the lineup, and he's likely to return very soon.
That is the big bad waiting in the wings to come back to do all this. It seems like DeAndre Hopkins and Tez Walker have kind of stepped into the fold and taken that touchdown role from him. Even if he caught that touchdown, which Grant Delpit knocked out this week, he still would be tied with Austin Hooper as the tight end 34. So we're not talking about a make or break. Can't blame any of this on the defense. On the defenses they faced, that is, they torched the Bills and they torched the Browns, who just came fresh off of shutting down Joe Burrow in that passing attack. This is a team that's 29th in pass plays per game, which is right in line with their seasonal ranking every year. This is where they always end up finishing. And I think we'll end it on this note. We have at Player Profiler Evan Engram down to tight end 28, and we have Mark Andrews down to tight end 19. Those are positions you do not want. You're not getting anything out of anybody below maybe tight end 11 or 12, and that's if they're playing a large majority of these passing downs, which we don't know if these guys are end up doing. So any parting thoughts on the tight end position before we move on to our Thursday night football preview?
With Andrews specifically, I wouldn't be shocked if he had a couple red zone touchdowns in the next few weeks. Just don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked in. The usage isn't there. Even if the fantasy points are there for 1 or 2 weeks, just don't buy in.
Yeah, matchups against the Lions, Chiefs, Texans, and Rams going into the bye. That's brutal, man. Some of the guys we've talked about have a pretty brutal schedule coming up. And I think the worst thing that could happen to fantasy managers is looking at last year and saying that his bounce back is replicable, because I just do not think this is the same passing offense. Zay Flowers has clearly gone up of a level. Lamar is dropping in touchdowns from 35 yards with ease. And that just hurts guys like Andrews, who are having the same physical difficulty getting to those spots that they won so early in their career.
Very true, especially when you have in the red zone, which is where Andrews thrives. You also have Lamar and Henry and Likely.
Man, just it's different times we live in. All right. Considering it is Thursday that you all are watching this, we're going to go over the Thursday night football matchup a little bit. So I'll get us off with some key notes. We've got Bills hosting the Dolphins, over under at 49.5. Bills favored to win 11.5. There's a lot this is an interesting game to me, because you have a team that's 2-0 versus a team that's 0-2. You have one of the best looking teams in the league versus one of the worst, divisional rivals, all the fun stuff. Dolphins have not been able to run the ball, but not because they are bad at it, but because they've been in a hole for most of these games. They're averaging 5.2 yards a rush. Bills have allowed 6.8 yards per rush. Could this be an Achane game? Could this be an Ollie Gordon game? I'm not sure. Those are my initial thoughts for this. What are you looking at as we kind of go over this Thursday night football action?
The number one thing I'm looking at is Devon Achane. In 2 games versus Buffalo last year, Achane scored 61.6 fantasy points and caught 15 passes. I think this is a smash spot for him this week. The usage has been incredible over the first 2 weeks. And, the Bills offense has somewhat had a weakness versus the run. And Oliver is also out, by the way. It's a big one.
These inactives are going to be big, especially for this Bills defense. I mean, they had that game in the books last week, well before Justin Fields got hurt. I mean, they had him shut down. But you have to wonder, I mean, how much of that is the true nature of this Bills defense, because they got obliterated by the Ravens rushing attack the week before. So I think this is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. Josh Allen, he finished as the quarterback 1 week 1, and then the quarterback 25 last week. I feel like he probably finishes somewhat in the middle as well. Tua is an interesting one. Tua ranks 3rd in catchable ball rate on balls thrown 5 yards or more down the field with a clean pocket. So this is the same old story with Tua. If he has his pocket, if he can get to his base, and he has a second to throw the damn ball, he's still able to succeed. We talked about Jalen Waddle as a potential faller last week. Well, what happened when he was given a little bit of time to throw? A beautiful deep ball to Jalen Waddle for that touchdown. So this could be a nice Waddle-Tyreek game. On the flip side, Allen gets the 32nd ranked pass defense at home, and he still counts to be throwing the ball to whoever's open. Do you have any Bills targets you like in this game?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a massive game for Josh Allen. As you mentioned, this pass defense is horrific. He's going to go crazy, probably put up 25 points through 3 quarters and then get pulled, if I had to guess. I think you can start Kincaid, Shakir, or Keon if you need someone in that tight end or flex conversation. You're just not locked in to anybody there. Then you should definitely consider those guys, because the Bills are going to put up a lot of points this week, in my opinion. Like 40 plus points, if I had to guess.
I think so. That makes the over feel like a pretty damn good bet to me. Keon will be interesting. He's gone 7 out of 8 quarters now without generating meaningful play. And I would really like to see where he ends up lying in the middle. This is the defense to do it. If you can go into week 4 with 2 good games and then 1 dud, and that dud being against a Jets defense with Sauce Gardner, and a game that they were up pretty early on. I mean, like I said, they put the clamps on the Jets very quickly. So I don't know how much we can take away from the passing offense yet. I think this is the defense to do it against. So I'll throw a little bit of a prediction out here. I'll take the Dolphins to cover. I think the over hits and the Dolphins have a late cover. I feel a little decent about it. Thursday night games, I feel like the action has been brought back offensively when the quarterbacks are able to get in their rhythm. That's a little bit, I might be eating some crow next week, but hey, we do these shows so we can give you all some fidelity and some transparency, and that's what I'm bringing right now.
Yeah, I also wrote down a prediction. Bills 44, Dolphins 14.
Okay.
A weird score there that includes a safety for the Bills.
Okay. I'll get really strange in there as well. And I'll say Bills 45, Dolphins 34. How does that feel?
Wow.
Can we live with that?
Wow. That's a lot of points for Miami.
That is. Well, this might be the last time we ever get to see them do this in Buffalo. So hopefully they I saw, what was it? Skylar Thompson did it one time in Buffalo in a playoff game.
True.
Maybe Tua can, and he did it in the snow. Maybe Tua can recreate the magic. So
Yeah,
all
it should be
right.
a good game script for them, although
Yeah.
they've only had good game scripts to start the year.
Correct.
So it's really hard to say. I think Tyreek's startable, maybe Waddle not so much.
Yeah, this will be third time's the charm here. We definitely blessed our followers last week with Kenneth Walker and Jalen Waddle both having nice games. So maybe if you guys are following us week to week, keep an eye on Hampton and Andrews and Evan Engram. Who knows? Maybe we have the touch over here. So that'll do it for risers and fallers today. Evan, you got any parting thoughts for the people on what you have going on and where they can find you?
At Evan Ringler FF on X, a lot of stat posts over there and charts, stuff like that. And then playerprofiler.com for rankings, data, all that.
Excellent. All right. As always, I am Chuck Bass. Good luck this week, guys. Cheers.